somewhere around December 2019 or so, left GS to start my own venture, GSN Invest, and that's how it started.
The Indian startup ecosystem has been growing by leaps and bounds. And if you have to talk of one big positive business impact that COVID brought to us, was this inquisitiveness in people to start something of their own and unleash their full potential sitting within the four boundaries. India has the third largest startup ecosystem, and the numbers are only set to rise from here. So to discuss startups in the equity space, we have Ganesh with us today. And I'm Calcutta alum. Ganesh, after being in the investment banking space with JP and GS, started his own venture, GSN Invest, with the idea of providing institutional quality research for retail investors. So without stealing any more thunder, welcome to CuratedX, Ganesh. It's really glad to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be a part of this.
Lovely. So before we deep dive into your venture, let's know a little bit about you as a person. Tell us a little bit of where you're from, what you've done in your education background, and your corporate experience.
Sure, definitely. So in terms of my background, so I started off with my engineering in BITS, and I think that was like the place where I pretty much discovered my love for finance in the first place. So somewhere around the first year, second year as such, I had discovered that engineering is perhaps not a good fit for me in terms of my aspirations as such. And I started kind of exploring a few options, and finance looked kind of quite interesting. So I think since the second year of BITS or so, I started kind of exploring finance and investing in quite a lot of detail. Luckily, post BITS, I kind of got an opportunity to work with the middle office of JP Morgan Investment Banking. So worked with them for a period of 2 years or so, post which I went to Calcutta. And I think Calcutta kind of honed in terms of my skill set, kind of helped me narrow down on what I wanted to kind of pursue over the long run or so. So kind of explored a lot of competitions, explored investment banking, sell-side research, front-end research and stuff like that. And finally zeroed down on the buy side of things. So worked with the Goldman Sachs buy side team for a period of 2 years, where I worked with the developed markets funds. But in terms of my kind of long-term aspirations, I wanted to work in the India markets, given the kind of potential that we see in these particular markets, right? So somewhere around December 2019 or so, left GS to start my own venture, GSN Invest, and that's how it started. Luckily or unluckily, so as in just I think around 4 or 5 months after I kind of left, COVID hit, and the work from home kind of became the norm there. And because people had a lot more time at home and a lot more disposable time as such, that kind of helped us in a way as such. And since the markets have also been supportive since then, that's also kind of helped the business. So that's kind of a brief background of where I come from and what I've kind of done till now as such.
Lovely. I think that's really an interesting story as to how you changed paths at the right time, the realization which comes through, right? That I'm really interested and intrigued about, and this is where I want to further progress my career. So, there are always some stepping stones that lead us to envision and build what we're actually picturing in our mind. So what was that motivation for you to start something of your own?
Right. So in terms of when I kind of looked at the market, right, I found one kind of very major gap in the market, in that when kind of retail investors look at investing, right? So there are a lot of options which kind of give them an option to invest, but a very few kind of options in the market which actually kind of teach them about the firms that they're investing in, right? So for example, if you are investing in a DMart today, you can kind of go through the firm's annual reports and stuff like that. But to kind of for a retail investor to really say understand the business, how it works, how it kind of operates, and how it will grow, it kind of becomes very, very difficult for them, right? So you had kind of good high quality research for institutional investors, for hedge funds and stuff like that. But that kind of seemed lacking on the retail side of things. So that was kind of the primary inspiration when we kind of started off, that this seemed like a gap in the market that we could potentially bridge. And with the kind of background that I had, so I had a bit of writing experience with Your Story as well. So in my time during BITS, I interned with Your Story for a while, So I had a bit of kind of writing experience in terms of simplifying concepts, making them easier for people to kind of understand and relate to. And I've got kind of my finance background in kind of working with JP and GS. So I thought bringing those two together, I could kind of potentially bring a product which could simplify kind of analysis of companies for the ordinary retail investor. So that was kind of the primary driver for the first product that we had, which was more on the educational side of things. So basically simplifying business models of Indian listed companies and presenting them to customers. So that's pretty much how we started. And so we kind of tried that out a bit. So initially, I kind of came out with content basically to see what people like, what kind of clicks. And within say 2-3 months, we found out that this model was something which people would not only consume on a daily basis, but they'd actually kind of pay to consume it as well, which kind of gave us a fair idea of say product market fit or so. And so since say March 2020, we then kind of started this full front.
Lovely,
That's
lovely. I think that that's really important to find that gap in the market and
right.
take that gap at the right time. So as it
Right.
is also, I think, very important to visualize those market trends, understand your niche, keeping the users at the forefront. So
Right.
why don't you share with us in detail about your business? What are the current offerings and what has been the journey so far?
Definitely. So currently we have two offerings. So the first, as I said, is the educational product, in which what we do is we try to kind of simplify businesses. So we take kind of market leading businesses in the Indian market, so we've got around 100 companies that we've analyzed till date. And what we do is we kind of try to break down the business model in terms of its revenue drivers, explaining the business, explaining the margin drivers, and explaining it in such a way that a lay investor who probably doesn't have, say, a background in finance or a background in investing, but is still kind of looking to make a more informed decision when he's kind of investing, right? Uh, so that's the kind of audience that we're targeting with the first product, right? So that is what we launched kind of starting off. So around November 2021, we also got a research analyst license. So post that, we've started our research analyst services, in which what we do is, other than kind of explaining business models and kind of explaining the analysis to people, we also give them recommendations. So we can now kind of analyze companies and give them kind of price recommendations in terms of telling them this is a good stock to buy, this is the price at which you can kind of potentially hold it to, right? So in terms of our kind of, so the way I kind of think of about it, in say 5 years down the line, I would want to be kind of running my own fund in a PMS structure or something of that sort, right? So I kind of think about this as a funnel. So basically the first kind of layer of the funnel. So we've got a free content that we kind of keep producing via our social media, via various channels, which kind of serves two purposes. One, it kind of establishes trust and kind of credibility in terms of the work that we do, in that a person who's probably never heard of me or our firm before can kind of go through the content and make an objective decision that this is kind of content that adds value to them. And then they kind of begin following us or begin following our content or whatever. And the second is, it also kind of serves as an acquisition channel for us, right? So a lot of people who kind of come join us have actually kind of consumed either our newsletters before or one of the analysis that we posted for free before, which kind of proves like a natural funnel to kind of get customers in. Once they've come in, generally they start off with the educational product, explore that for a year or two. And once they've kind of built enough credibility in terms of that trust in our product, they then move to the research product, knowing that we kind of do good work, good due diligence work, and the intent is to kind of run the research product for another 3-4 years or so, build both a track record of performance for our side of things, as well as the capital that you need for a PMS, and then move to the PMS structure, right? So I kind of wanted to bootstrap the startup end to end or so. So this kind of gives me an opportunity to kind of manage that while kind of staying a nimble bootstrap startup.
Great, great, lovely. So just to add on to that, I mean, like you talked of as well, right? We see a lot of people who are making content in personal finance. There are apps like Grow, Small Case, who are establishing their niche. So
Right.
what do you think that is the one moat for people to subscribe to GSN Invest? And also just an add on to that, do you have, as you talk of scaling this up further, do you have any plans of getting into the digital assets research space as well?
Right. So currently we are focused primarily on the Indian equity markets as such, because the kind of depth that's there in the Indian markets, that will itself kind of take us quite a lot of time to cover. So the focus as of now is primarily on the Indian markets. What we've done is we are kind of effectively moving down the market cap spectrum, right? So we started off with kind of marquee top companies. So once we kind of got a good knack of those 100 companies, we're now kind of expanding to 100 challenger companies. So basically numbers 2, 3, 4, who aren't kind of market leaders, but who are doing a lot of right things in terms of establishing their presence. And the intent is to kind of keep expanding our coverage of the Indian markets. And that's where we kind of, I would primarily want to stay focused on, because that's kind of the core skill set that I bring to the table, and where I think I'll kind of have an edge over other people kind of doing that, right? So that's in terms of the focus side of things. In terms of the content, right? So as you said, there's a lot of competition out there, and a lot of people kind of making good content, not only on say your Twitter or LinkedIn, but also on Insta, YouTube. People come out with reels, people coming out with videos. So a lot of content there. I think the good part of it is the market is so large and kind of so underpenetrated. There's kind of lot of room to go around, right? So it's not kind of someone taking a piece of someone else's pie. The pie itself is kind of expanding. So there's kind of plenty to go around as such. In terms of our kind of core skill set, we are kind of very, very clear about that we want to focus on kind of deep research of kind of concepts and of firms that we analyze, right? So that's what we kind of focus on. And in terms of our strategy, our content, that's how we kind of primarily try to grow as such. So for example, one thing, so on Twitter, the way we kind of focusing our content is say once every 2 weeks or so, we come out with a detailed thread on any company that we like, right? So in that, we kind of explore the company's growth, moats, all of that in a lot of detail, which kind of showcases our the depth with which we kind of analyze companies, which some other kind of potential competitors might not be able to do, right? So that's how we kind of try to stand out. And what that does is not only does it kind of establish our kind of strength in the market, but because that's a content that adds value to a lot of people, that kind of gets a lot of shares, a lot of retweets as well, which kind of naturally helps us with our distribution and our reach, right? So that's how we are kind of primarily going about it till now, and that's the broad strategy as such.
No, 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 very, very true. I think specifically in the research space, as you mentioned, the pie always keeps expanding, considering a market like India, which is ever growing, and newer
Right,
people entering this space. But what stands out essentially is the kind of quality content that you're bringing and the credibility that you establish over time, which I think GSN Invest has been doing really well.
thank you.
So just to move on to the other side of things now, like you said, right? Every startup comes with its ups and downs, and there's a whole downturn that we saw with the COVID's impact on the economy, a lot more such socioeconomic factors which do impact businesses. So as a business, what sort of challenges have you faced in scaling this up, and how
Right.
difficult has it been, like you mentioned, running specifically a bootstrap startup?
Understood. Makes sense. As you said, right? So from the very beginning, I was kind of very, very clear that I wanted to kind of bootstrap the startup as we grew, because in terms of so I basically see this as a very long-term opportunity, right? So something that I'd want to be running for the next 20, 30 years or so, because it's a very, very large market, and you've kind of got plenty of time to kind of build a presence in that particular market. So I wanted to kind of grow at our own speed and kind of do things the right way. And once you kind of get some bit of external capital, there's a certain kind of pressure on you in terms of performing, and which might not be kind of in the best interest of the customers that you serve, or whatever. Right? So that was very clear that we wanted to kind of bootstrap from the beginning. I think one benefit that our business got was, in its very nature, it's not very capital intensive, right? So effectively, my key costs are the amount that I need to pay my employees, and some miscellaneous expenses, right? So it's not too capital intensive in that way, which kind of makes it a good business to have as a bootstrap business, because you don't have a lot of upfront costs that you need to put in when you're starting off, right? So that those two things together kind of made me kind of bootstrap it. In terms of challenges, of course, there were, so I think during the first wave, it wasn't too much. During the second wave, we actually kind of had a drop in demand that kind of came in. and that was a kind of prolonged demand. So around say a month or two of kind of depressed demand as such, which kind of gets challenging, right? So even if you're so for any entrepreneur that will get challenging, for a bootstrap entrepreneur it gets doubly so. The way we've tried to kind of protect ourselves from it is, one, we kind of always try to have some amount of cash reserves in our side. So ideally on a firm level, I try to keep say around 5 to 6 months of cash reserves handy, so that even if we have a month or two which are kind of lean months, it shouldn't kind of affect the team's performance and morale, and we'll kind of ride through that and come up stronger on the other side. The other thing that we did was, very early on, we knew that we wanted to have some amount of stability in the business. So we got an institutional client on board somewhere around July of 2020, right? So we got an institutional client who was a European hedge fund on board, and that basically gave us a steady kind of monthly revenue as such. That kind of gave you an annuity sort of a revenue, which kind of stays with you irrespective of market conditions and market performance, right? So that helped on the revenue side. On the cost side, as I said, right, so we've been very, very prudent and very, very agile right from the beginning. So we kind of track each and every of our cost items with a lot of precision. So a typical Marwadi sort of business that you would call it. And that has helped us kind of not only survive various uh, kind of issues that come up, but it kind of helps us become stronger. And whenever we kind of get good opportunities in the market, it helps us capitalize on those a lot better.
Got it, got it. I think that there's a lot to learn with regards to managing your finances the right way when you're starting off something of your own. I would just like to take a step back and pick up on another thing that you spoke of when you mentioned publishing things on Twitter and gaining that visibility. So,
Right.
with regards to that, the influencer and the digital landscape, has been on the rise, and businesses can no longer grow in silos like that or aloof from the social world, right? So, and there
Right.
has been a lot of growing significance and relevance which is being attached to this social media presence. So just wanted
Right.
to know for you, what value do you attach to this, to having
Right.
that social media visibility presence? And according to you, what should be the strategy of founders in building their social media visibility for the business?
Right. So for me personally, social media visibility was very, very important as such, because the kind of business that we come in, right? It's a business where the person who joins in only if they have a good amount of trust in you, right? So it's typically, so if you have kind of selling a low value product as such, a customer might just kind of try it and see if it works or no. If you're selling a financial service, or if you're in the financial services business, trust kind of becomes very, very important. And that is typically hard to do if you're doing pure inorganic growth, right? So if you just do ads or just that, that's kind of just one impression on the customer. And if they haven't kind of seen your work, that doesn't really help build trust with the customer, right? So for me, this was social media was kind of a very, very important channel right from the beginning, because I knew that to kind of acquire a customer and retain a customer, it was a kind of long relationship that I needed to have with them, and I need to kind of invest upfront to kind of build that trust, right? So that part of it was very clear. Luckily for me, what happened was that I had kind of good enough reach on LinkedIn before I started, because I was active on LinkedIn otherwise as well. So for the initial few customers that we kind of got on board, it was primarily through content on LinkedIn. So we used to kind of analyze companies or analyze, say, issues with governance of companies on LinkedIn, and that kind of content got a lot of visibility, and that kind of got in the first few customers. Somewhere down the journey, we realized that we didn't kind of want to stay focused on just one channel. So we tried kind of exploring two different options. So we went to Twitter and we went to Instagram as well, basically to try our content in those formats and see where we kind of get better results. With Instagram, the results weren't kind of, so we kind of got a good amount of growth and users on Insta, but the conversion there was kind of not up to what we wanted. So my kind of view of that was, probably people go on Insta for more kind of casual content consumption, which wasn't in line with what we were kind of giving on a consistent basis. Twitter for us kind of went quite well. So a lot of the threads that we wrote on Twitter and a lot of the content that we wrote on Twitter kind of got a lot of retweets, and kind of big people in the industry kind of endorse that as well, which kind of really helped us, right? So as of now, we are focusing primarily on LinkedIn and Twitter. which I think is more in line with the type of content we do in terms of more kind of serious content, more longer posts. And that's where we kind of want to continue. So in terms of a broader strategy for firms as such, I think it's important to find where your kind of content or whether your kind of marketing sits well with that audience, right? So for example, if you're a D2C brand or something of that sort on, say, the fashion space or the food space, Insta would probably work better for you. For us, given the kind of places where our audience was and where they liked consuming our content, something like a LinkedIn or a Twitter, where we could have good long form content, worked better for us in terms of conversion and the metrics that we looked at.
Great. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's only when you try out different avenues, when you figure out that this is what works best for us. And I think you rightly said that and also executed that. So great. So before we wrap up, one very important question for the audience. What suggestions or advice would you give to people wanting to start something of their own or who are new to the business world?
Right. So I think the most important thing I would tell people is that look at kind of opportunities that arise in the market and at least give it a shot, right? I think people in general tend to be a bit too risk averse, even when they don't particularly need to, right? So if you are from a reasonably good background, if you kind of done good work, and if you tried out a product with the market, right? So what I would recommend is, if you have a product or an idea in mind, try it out with your audience while you're still in a job or while you still have that protection, and see how that clicks, right? Because if there is a product for which there's a natural demand, it will still work with that audience and you still get that demand, right? So once you have that kind of tested, you can then take the next step and perhaps kind of give it a shot, right? So I think in terms of the opportunity size in the Indian market, it's kind of tremendous as such. And in terms of both the customer willingness to kind of try out a product and buy, as well as say the willingness of capital to bet on a new idea and give it a shot. I think there's never been a better time in the Indian market to kind of start, to be very frank. So that's what I would recommend is at least give your product a shot, kind of sample it in terms of a sample or some sort of way to your customers to kind of get a hang of what they want and whether it works or no. And if it works, definitely try to give it a shot at least for say 1 or 2 years very seriously. And if it works, you kind of end up with a great business. If it doesn't, there's always, you can always kind of go back and try something else, right? So I think at least giving it a shot once in your life is very, very important, especially when you are in a market as lucrative as the Indian market is right now.
Definitely, definitely. I think it's always about that leap of faith that one has to take and ensuring that consistency. It's not that a startup or an entrepreneurial journey will reap results in just a few months. You always have to stick to it, ensure that yes, you're consistently working towards it to get those results in the end. I think it's been lovely speaking with you. Thank you once again, Ganesh. It's been really, really an insightful conversation, and I'm sure there's so much to take away and learn from this. We wish you all the very best for your business ahead. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me, and wishing you and CuratedX the best for your journey as well. I hope you do kind of very well and become a good platform where a lot of entrepreneurs want to kind of come and kind of demonstrate the work that we do. So best of luck to you as well.
Thank you so much. We hope to stay in touch. Thank you.